Hey, welcome to Northpointe Plus, the podcast from Northpointe Community Church in DeWitt, Michigan, that we talk about Sunday's message and just kind of dive a little bit deeper. This is episode 96.
Great.
We're pushing 100, almost 2 years, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
We're here with Larry Carter. Do you have any other new title besides former retired president of Great Lakes Christian College?
No, there's no title now. Just
Larry Carter, husband of Judy.
there you go. That's the title.
Grandpa, father, grandpa,
That's
all
right.
that good stuff.
That's right.
Did you do anything fun over the 4th?
What did I do over the 4th? I think Judy and I just spent some time. I think we went over to Grand Haven
Oh, nice.
and just had some fun.
See some fireworks?
We did fireworks at Sharp Park
Oh,
on the 3rd.
Oh, got
At
it.
Sharp Park there in Delta Township.
Got it. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
always really nice. We have a spot that we know where to go, and we get there and put down our chairs so nobody else can get where we
Can
get.
take your
We know
spot?
right where the spot is to sit. And I'm not sharing where that is. It's like your favorite fishing place. I'm not going to share that.
So the next year we just need to follow you around and find the spot. We had some excitement on the 4th in that our neighbors' fireworks, they had one fall over.
Oh, the Beavers family?
No, not the beaver. No. We were up at the cottage, but
Oh.
one fell over and shot into our crowd, and so
Oh.
it was
Somebody get hurt?
nobody hurt, but it was exciting, and it did have people scrambling. So
Did you fire any in return?
no, because they're good friends, but it was a little scary,
Oh, that would be
and
scary.
one of the crew, one of our extended family, is a Gulf War veteran, and so it triggered because it literally was like being shot at. So it was
that's
a little scary,
That
but
is-
everybody's okay.
well, that's good.
And so you want to talk about?
Well,
So-
one thing that really was a cool thing since last been on here. I don't know if I shared before that my middle son, Brian, who's in his 40s, it's kind of a strained relationship.
Yeah.
The oldest
lot of
boy
years.
and the youngest, we really get along, but he's has a different view of Scripture and how you live it out. I won't get into all the details, but as a result, it's really alienated us and haven't been really close at all with he and his wife or their children. They have
Yeah.
triplets,
Yeah,
and but we got called first part of June, and my son's wife, my daughter-in-law, said, "Hey, how about we have the triplets come up and spend a week with you?" And they're 15 now.
15 years old.
Last time we really had anything to do with them was about when they were 4.
Wow.
So really didn't know them much. We had a blast, and they had a blast. And they're big kids and grown up, and one's a reader, another one loves history, so I talked about that. And
Nice.
loves literature. Another guy, he's an outdoorsman. He likes to just chop down things. So we were out there chopping wood down our property.
Nice.
So it's really a blessing. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
sharing it because it was a real blessing,
Yeah.
a real breakthrough, and just trying to be patient with the relationship. Let God work on it.
You never know what God's going to do.
And so this was a real breakthrough. And then we brought them back down to where they live in Ohio, God's country down in Ohio. And,
Land of the free and the home of the brave.
Anyway, I had a conversation, an hour and a half with my son.
That's so good.
Just he and I, and that's been, probably 11 years since that's happened.
Wow.
So it was great.
God's good and
So that's right. So that's a real blessing.
faithful, and you never know what God's
right.
doing.
Nope.
You just
Yep.
one step at a time, be faithful.
Yeah. So hang in there.
Yep.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
Hope, and see what God's going to do.
Yeah.
That's kind of the message.
Good stuff. And I'm sure your grocery bill that week was
Oh my gosh. I'd forgotten what it was like to have teenagers. And the one guy,
3 boys,
the
15-year-olds.
The one guy who is an outdoorsman, this is true. He drank a gallon of milk a day.
Wow.
So he just
That's why he's big, right?
well, he's 15. He's 6'2", weighs 220.
Wow.
So he's a big kid. So, and he eats like a big kid.
That's great. That's great. So, Sunday's message was all about Moses.
Yep.
Do you want to give us just kind of the overview?
Well, it just fits in with the theme of the series about crooked sticks and how, God can use.
Draw straight lines with crooked
That's right.
sticks.
And so, which kind of fits with Moses' staff,
Yeah.
No, it wasn't a crooked staff, but it was just a staff of wood. But that sometimes when we don't have a very high opinion of ourselves, that doesn't preclude God's opinion of us.
Yeah.
And God created us as we are for a reason, for a purpose, and that we need to listen to the voice of God rather than the voice of men or our circumstances.
Yeah.
And to say that I am here for a purpose, I am here for a reason. And so I need to really listen to what God has for me in my life through His Word, through His Holy Spirit, and to see where that leads.
I thought it was really cool just in terms of how God works. Again, you never know how God is moving ahead of time and around in ways that you don't know. So Gwen Tavonen did mid-service yesterday,
Right.
and she had kind of thought through what she wanted to say, and that she wanted to communicate that even though she wasn't confident in doing that role, that wasn't comfortable in doing it, that she was still willing to let God use her in that way, which was the theme of the message. And she didn't know about that. We hadn't talked about it. I just thought, again, it's cool to see how the Holy Spirit works and brings pieces together. I thought into the message, just that whole idea that God can use us, the song "Beautiful Things."
Yes.
Just was such a strong song.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want all of you who are watching this to understand that I've always had a very high opinion of Rick and his good heart towards people. But I just want you to know that he stole Gwen's notes that she was trying to read and go by, and hid it behind himself so that she couldn't get to it. And so she was a little panicky there for a second there because she was reviewing the notes. But then when Rick got up to leave, I gave the notes back to Gwen, so she was okay. I just want them to know that.
Thanks for sharing my evil side. What draws you to the character of Moses?
He's so real. There's sometimes I read about characters in the Bible that I'm going, wow, they're made of better stuff than me, type of thing. But Moses, kind of like Jacob. I really like the story of Jacob because I relate to the guy, so insecure. He's got to do things to get attention to himself, all kinds of things. And here Moses, I can relate. One instance, for example, is like, I don't know if I'm sure you have, you've stuck your neck out for God and it didn't end well.
Yeah.
Right? You thought you did. You thought you were doing something for the right reason, and then it ended up backfiring. Well, here, Moses thought he was doing something courageous and noble and brave and standing up for the people. Surely God's going to love this. The people are going to love it. And so what happens to the guy? Sticks his neck out and gets chopped off.
Yeah.
And it all backfires on him. The people reject him. It looks like God stayed out of the picture for a while there. And
you're talking about when he killed the Egyptian.
When he killed the Egyptian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's why I think one of the could be motivations in the conversation that happened later when God came to him, more or less, my personality would be, hey, God, I was there before and you weren't there for me. Now you want me to be there for you?
Yeah.
Type of thing. And it's like, look where I've been the last 40 years. 40 years, because somehow you didn't help make the situation right with me. So he's just so real.
Yeah.
And I can so relate to him at so many different levels. I can relate when he's out when he gets so frustrated with the people, he strikes the rock in anger.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
Dang on, you stupid people. And then God penalizes him for it. But I can relate to the guy. It's just so coming down from the mountain, the people are partying like this and just going, and what does he do with the 10 Commandments?
He throws them down.
He smashes them. It's like, that's me. You
Yeah.
know? So I guess that's why I'm so drawn to Moses.
Do you think he was just in case this whole there you are. In case the whole story is kind of new, you can read about this in the beginning of Exodus. So if you start in Exodus 1 and read the first 10, 12 chapters, something like that, you get most of the story of Moses. But do you think so? He's raised in Pharaoh's home. Mm-hmm. He kills the Egyptian and then goes out into the wilderness when he's 40 years old.
Yep.
Just when he was probably groomed to take over and to have greater responsibility. And then he's out being a shepherd for 40 years. Yep. Do you think that when God appears to him in the burning bush, that at that point he's still dealing with the hurt and the pain from 40 years earlier?
I don't know that it could be. The Bible doesn't say.
Yeah.
I think why I can relate to him as well is sometimes we get wrapped up in the positions we hold. And we think that somehow that's a reflection on us, or that's who we are.
Yeah.
Is our position.
That's where we get our value.
And so here that's been taken from him, and here he is, the shepherd taking care of somebody else's sheep. It's not even his sheep.
Right.
And so he's with Midianites of all people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think he was bitter. Mm-hmm. I think that would be understandable to think that, look where I was, and now look where I am. And in the back of his mind, it could be, I was trying to do the right thing. I mean, my fellow Hebrew people were getting beat up by this dude. So why is that a wrong thing, you know? So I think there might some I don't know that he felt necessarily guilty. I think he felt like something bad happened to him. It wasn't really his fault, type of thing.
Yeah, as you were preaching, I was just trying to think through how you process things, and it's interesting to me. Oh, and we didn't talk about it in the message at all, but his wife is a Midianite.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he's connected with Midianites, but he would have known the stories about Abraham and Sarah, mm-hmm. about Isaac and Rebekah, about Jacob and his wives, and how important it was to be God's people and to stay connected to God's people and to not intermarry. The law hasn't come down yet that says don't intermarry with people outside the Jewish faith, the Hebrew people. But I wonder if, as he's out there in the wilderness and they start a family, that kind of thing, if it's one more thing that he feels alienated from his roots.
Yes, I think that's a really good point.
Lonely, forgotten,
right.
And yet God comes to him in that time in a very dramatic way. Yeah. And he still says, I'm not your guy.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
Yeah. When people have said, like when we've heard the "you're worthless" kind of comments, mm-hmm. How do you keep from just trying to prove them wrong, mm-hmm. And to like how do you live in the line between saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to show you," and being not just content, but having a sense, no, I am who God made me. That's good. Mm-hmm. Does that question make any sense?
Yeah. Sometimes there's a seed of truth in mm-hmm. a rejection that you're not right for this part or whatever.
Yeah.
I was at Lake James Christian Assembly,
uh-huh.
and there was a trio that was looking for a tenor to sing, and they were all very good singers and so forth. So I said, well, I'll do it. So I went up and I sang a song with them, and they didn't say anything. and I said, so am I going to be a part of it? He says, well, you're a little pitchy. That's with a P.
Yeah.
Pitchy. And so it's like, oh, and I thought I had a pretty good voice.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going, oh, and it's like, yikes, that really, really hurt me. So I was tempted during the song service, sit in the front row and sing really loud so people can hear my voice. But I realized, I'm just not their caliber. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'm good enough for some people, but not those people, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing I've learned through the years, rejection is difficult no matter what. But it's when people make comments then about who you are, or you hear. I've realized that Satan uses those words against me, even if those people never intended it to be harmful,
right,
or hurtful. Satan takes those words and makes them so, and he uses those to hurt and to have you feel less than what you should feel. And so I just don't want to play Satan's game. One of the things that I think people have the ability is to compartmentalize in their own brains. And, well, for example, when my son took issue with me, my second son, and we've had a really difficult problem in relational problems, but I have the ability to compartmentalize and more or less in my brain say, I'm not going to let that kid ruin my life.
Yeah.
Now, my wife Judy's had a harder time with that, being her son, and she bore him and so forth, but have the ability to compartmentalize. And I think that if we can work toward that and to say that what is being said here is what Satan is saying.
Right.
That's over here. This is not what God is saying. This is not God's opinion of me or other people that I trust and really listen to, but I allow this small group to speak louder. Remember when I was first in ministry, there was a small group of people in the church who were really being critical of my ministry. And so I went to the elders and said, I want to have a vote of confidence. I want to have a vote of confidence because I want to show these people that people are for me. And the chairman of the elders said, Larry, we're not going to do that. I said, why is that? He said, because if 100 people vote and 10 people say they don't like you, you'll focus on that 10 people. Yep. And we support you. We believe in you. Let's move on. And I thought that was really great advice for me because I think sometimes that's our focus is on the small percentage. I remember a guy who was the president of the Ohio Board of Realtors. God bless Ohio. But he cheers. I was in a workshop with him, and he said, in any organization, if you're the leader of it, up to 20% of the people in the organization won't like you and won't support you, no matter what you do or who you are. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that works that way, but 80% do. So focus on the 80%.
Yeah.
And so I guess maybe that's a long answer to that question, but the basic thing is I think Satan uses sometimes even innocent, maybe even well-meaning criticism that's supposed to be positive criticism, and changes it to make it something bad for your life and helps to ruin
to destroy,
Right. And so to learn that, say, okay, is there a seed of truth in there? And don't take it to an extreme.
Right.
Right. So that's how I work with it.
A number of years ago when I was on staff at a church out in Virginia, Bob Russell came in and talked to our leaders there. Bob Russell he's retired minister of Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, Kentucky. When he retired, it was church of 18,000, something like that. And this was getting towards the end of his ministry there. And he said, he's talking to leaders, and he said, you need to know, this is the amplification of what you just said. He said, you need to know that at the church at Southeast, he said, 90% of the people love me. They would do anything for me. He said, and then there's another 5 to 7% that could take me or leave me. It's no big deal either way. He said, then there's about 3%, 3% that wish I were dead. And he said for perspective, know that 3% of 18,000 is a lot of people.
It is a lot of them.
And he said that the challenge is to to focus on the 90%, 95%, and not the 3 to 5%.
That's exactly right.
For me, as I look back over life, the comments that have been difficult, it's so critical for us to find our value in how God sees us, right. and to walk in the center of what we know God has called us to do, right. and to not be shaken from that,
right.
Because the good comments can be as damaging as the bad comments. And for me, for whatever reason it's worth, I've kept oftentimes the bad comments to just help me keep perspective and to not get a big head.
Right.
So I have a note in my desk that came at a point in time where I was being voted on at a church, and the note said, I shared this with you yesterday, that the note said, "We can do better than this," about me. And I've kept it in part to just be able to laugh about it because I was so confident when we came that God was in the process of us coming, but also to just have perspective to know 100% of the people are not going to ever love you, and that's okay. And some of those people that speak ill of you, that don't like you, there's going to be opportunity to minister to them, to love on them, to encourage them, to walk with them when they're hurting in a way that will transform that relationship incredibly.
That's right.
And it is interesting that Moses, if we get back to the message, that Moses ran away from his people and God used him to come back and free them. So don't lose sight. I think that's the real challenge. Don't lose sight of who God says that we are.
That's right.
And being faithful to Him in that.
That's right.
The Claypool quote that was in the message. The end of it said that we need to learn to get to get what's inside outside by serving and sharing. Right. How does serving and sharing help get that sense of the value, the intrinsic value we have from God? How does that help us get that out into how we interact with people?
Well, I think maybe I'm understanding your question.
Yeah.
Is that we discover our worth when we serve and when we share. That's that when we impact people and we see the difference that what we've done makes in people's lives, that's what really helps to change us. There's a guy named Tim Krause who works with Go Ministries down in the Dominican Republic. We went on a mission trip down there a long time ago when he was a high school kid. And all we did was serve the people all the time we were down there. And Tim was telling me, he goes, "Man, this feels so good to do this." And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, I think this is where God's calling me. I said, "Really?" And so he went to Bible college, went to Great Lakes Christian College, graduated, and went back down there, met a young lady there, married into that family, and Go Ministries now, it was already going, but he was one of the early guys coming on there. They're like, I'll say, $10 to $15 million operation down there. It's huge. One of the things that he did that he noticed, it's a longer story. We have time for it.
Yeah.
But I forget the name, the Spanish name, but it's called The Hole, and what it is, it's a garbage dump, and you can see there's a cliff where the trucks come and just dump their garbage down into this huge pit that's probably a couple of acres in size. Maybe it's more than that. It's probably about 5 acres in size down there, but the garbage stays on the side of the hills, and the garbage that was in the middle has been flattened out, and people live down there because it's free land. They have no place else to live. They live in a garbage dump. And so Tim was really called to make a difference for those people. One of the things he noticed was there's little creeks that are down in the bottom there, and he saw children running across in bare feet to get to the other side of the village. And so what he said was, "I'm going to build a bridge." And he raised the funds, helped do the construction, got the workers down there, and they built a bridge so the children don't have to run through the creek anymore. And they called that bridge Timoteo's Bridge. And Tim was telling me, he goes, "This is what it's all about." And he feels, it's like when you're hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah.
When you serve and share in the area where you know you're making a difference, your life is full.
Yeah.
And it just, you discover your worth and how you help to change other people's lives.
How do you find that? How do you find that place that is that sweet spot of what God designed
I
for you?
think that's what I talked about, that Frederick Buechner illustration about what is it that really brings you great joy and satisfaction or gladness? And then the other line is, what's one of the world's great needs? And it's at that point that they intersect. That's where God calls you. Here's an example. J. Henry, as a missionary in India, he saw a real need to work with lepers. So he and his wife, he was in financial accounting business for a company. And he decided, he and his wife left and went up to Nepal to work at a leper colony.
Wow.
And he goes, now, we did some great things there, but there wasn't a morning I woke up thinking, this is what I was made for. Not one. And then he had an uncle, well, it's his father-in-law, wasn't it? It was his father-in-law, A.J. Lowell, who said to him, I think you need to come down here and help me start churches. And so he came down. As a result, started a Bible college. He's planted over 100 churches in central India.
Wow.
And it's like, yes, this is what I need.
This is what I was designed to do.
So it's like, sometimes there's some great needs out there, but you get no joy or satisfaction out of meeting those needs. It's just like something that doesn't resonate with you. So I would say, try different things.
Okay.
Get involved with this, get involved with that, Habitat for Humanity, or do any number of different things.
Yeah.
And find out, is this like, man, this is what really resonates with me.
So you don't have to wait until you've done some kind of analysis and said, okay, it is this thing, and not do anything until that point in time. Right. It really is a process of saying yes where there's a need.
Absolutely.
And sometimes being faithful to meet that need until God opens the next door.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Moses takes his donkey, his family, his staff to Egypt. Can you just talk? As I was listening yesterday, I thought it's so interesting to me. You talked about him taking the staff and that God would use the staff, but it was interesting to me that he took his family and how important family support is. Mm-hmm. So, can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, maybe even difficult question when you're talking about this, because my wife, for example, agreed to start dating me because she thought I'd be the last person to ever go in ministry.
Yeah.
Which shows what kind of I was like in college, right? And I won't get into all the stuff I did. Anyway, I was not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And wasn't involved in Bible studies on campus, and but I worked all the time. So I went right from class to work. I worked 30 hours a week and plus had a weekend youth ministry. So I really wasn't involved and I did the youth ministry because there was a requirement for Christian service to graduate. So that's the only reason I did it. I thought, okay, I'll do that, and I'll get paid to get this credit for that. So that's the reason I did it. And so Judy,
good motives.
Yeah, that was my motive.
Yeah.
But Judy and I, when we graduated, we were thinking about what to do, and we got a job out in Illinois, but it was there when we were going to the small country church that God called me to ministry. And here's the deal. My wife is a true believer in the Lord, and so when I told her what God said to me, she wasn't happy.
Was not a part of her plan.
She was not happy and didn't want me to do it. But she knew that this was of God. And so she was willing to step back and do it. She just had seen what churches had done to preachers before, and especially preachers' kids living like in a fishbowl.
Yep.
And it's really, really tough when your kids are young and growing up in that atmosphere. My oldest boy, Jason, being in ministry, when he was in high school, he was kind of a tough kid, got in a lot of fights. In fact, he set the all-time record for red cards for Caledonia High School in soccer. It's a record that still hasn't been broken. So my son holds the record for red cards
for being thrown out of soccer games.
But that was kind of a reaction to having to be perfect. And so it made it's just tough for kids.
Yeah.
And so Judy just didn't want that. And our first Sunday after I got to church, we're 23 years old. I think I've shared this with you, but the first Sunday, I'm walking in, and Judy's walking in with me, and I go up to talk to some elders before we get up to start the service. And chairman of the elders' wife comes over to Judy, and Judy had bought a nice dress to wear for the first Sunday, wanted to be, feel attractive and nice for the church. The chairman of the elders' wife comes up and looks her up and down and says, "My, don't we pay the preacher well?" First thing.
Ouch.
She wanted to turn around and walk right back out. Second thing is, we lived in a parsonage right next to the church, and our refrigerator was the church's refrigerator. And the ladies of the church would walk in whenever they wanted, move our stuff aside to put their stuff in the refrigerator, because that was the church's refrigerator. So all those things didn't work out very well. But over time, Judy found her place, for example, at Kentwood. She took a preschool daycare of 15 kids, and by the time she was done with it was running over 300 kids in the church, and it was the premier program in the whole city of Grand Rapids.
Wow.
So she found her niche, and that's her ministry, and she did a fantastic. Talk about meeting all the requirements and licensing and payroll and all that. That's a huge job, but she loved it.
So there are some times.
Yeah, you're
no, that's okay. Let me just clarify. There are some times when God calls and your family's not on board,
right?
And you say, "Yeah, I'm still going to follow God," and the family comes along. Yeah. And there are other times when God, I think, directs and confirms because the family's on board. Right. So it's messy in terms of
It's not clear cut, and it's really. I think it's really important eventually for a spouse to be super supportive.
Yeah.
Because there's times. I was in my second ministry. I was so involved, and our kids were all young. I think one was just a newborn, and Judy. I came home late one night again, and Judy said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Sure." She goes, "Do you know you've been gone 21 straight nights?"
Wow.
I said, "I had no idea. I didn't know that." But I was counseling. I was visiting with families. I was like sold out to Jesus type of thing.
Yeah.
And I was forgetting I had a family.
Yeah.
I was married to the church. And so that has to be the balance too back. So.
Yeah. And I think that there's a challenge to say when you're establishing your family and when you're making choices about who to marry, that kind of thing, that is a really important thing to have someone who's on the same page, moving in the same direction that you are, and that if you come to know Jesus and your spouse is not on board, to just be patient and know that God's timing is different.
Yeah, that's right.
I think back through my different ministries and think when the kids were little and I was gone too much, or stuff had happened and I get pulled away, Deb very consistently with our kids said, she would say, it's really cool that God can use your dad in this way.
That's right.
And we share, but we also have the time that he's all with us, and that God's using him in that way. So moving in the same direction is a big deal.
Yeah.
You talked about the one verse in Acts being your life verse. Mm-hmm. Talk about that, and what for you, what's it mean to have a life verse?
Well, I think about the Apostle Paul had quite a few life verses. For me to live as Christ, to die as gain.
Yeah.
Or I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Those are great life verses, and I think people can quote those and say,
"Fought the good fight."
That's mine. Yeah, I fought the good fight. Now laid up for me in heaven. Anyway, this one just really spoke to me when I read it many, many, many years ago. That I guess, God, what I want to do, I want to serve the purpose of God in my own generation.
Yeah.
And so, however that fleshes out, and because When I left the pulpit ministry to become president of Great Lakes Christian College, that life verse helped shape that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, your purpose is for me to do this. And it's so interesting because, I don't have a doctorate or anything, and I'm surrounded by these guys who
Do have doctorates.
and think they're smarter than me. I remember one guy came in, and a professor, and said, I have 2 doctorates. So what I say really counts more than what you say. And I said, well, there's 2 kinds of smarts. There's book smarts and street smarts. I got the street smarts, and so you lose. Maybe I shouldn't be so confrontational, but that's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
And I go, okay. And second thing is, I'm the president. So, but the life verse for me is what carries me through. Is like I'm serving God's purpose, and so I want to make sure that this is God's purpose for me at this time.
Yeah.
I was going to share the previous president. He felt even though he's a very successful preacher, did very well, and he's really acknowledged to be quite a leader. He just felt that when he was around academic types, he felt really insecure, like he shouldn't be in the room, and he left after 5 years, and I think it's because he really didn't feel he was serving God's purpose there.
Yeah.
And I think when you know you're fulfilling God's purpose at a place,
Yeah.
there's nothing there. You don't have anything over me, bud.
Yeah.
This is God's thing for me.
Yeah. It really is that juncture again.
Yeah,
That
that's
you were
right.
talking about.
This is God's thing for me, and whether you have a doctor or not, good for you.
Yeah.
You know a lot about a really small area.
Right.
That's what it tells me. So good.
Yeah. It's funny. It makes me think of a conversation I had with my dad when at one point, my grandpa had died, and my dad and my aunt took a path with the settling of my grandpa's estate, that they were real involved in the farm, in the management of the farm, and it was a very specific part of the IRS code. As they put things in place so that they could manage the farm and save a lot on taxes. Well, he ended up being audited, and the auditors came and really went after him, and my dad was just not confrontational, but he's going through things, and he said to the IRS, he said, no, this is what it says. And they said, no, that's not what it says. And he said, yeah, actually it is what it says. This is what it's here. And we were talking about it afterwards, as a kid, and he said, those people aren't any smarter than me.
No, that's right.
And so anything that they know,
Right.
I still need to study and figure out, and I can know it too.
That's right.
I just haven't applied in that particular area.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It's exactly right.
That conversation prompted conversations later about people that speak other languages and say, somebody who can speak Chinese is not smarter than I am.
No.
They just speak Chinese.
That's right.
Well,
I think it goes back to is that, I don't know if this is applying it the right way, but God is no respecter of persons.
yeah,
And it's like each of us are special in the eyes of God, that we are here for a unique purpose.
yep,
And that because you have this title or that job or you live in that kind of house, that doesn't make you any better than me. We're all equal in the eyes
Right.
of God, and that we're all created for a purpose that's going to really impact eternity.
yeah,
And so, man, that's the deal.
yeah.
And so you have nothing over me.
Yeah, if I can just kind of tie that in a bow in terms of for us at Northpointe, for everybody who's watching, listening, whatever, Satan so desperately tries so desperately to convince us that we're not good enough or don't know enough
Right.
to lead a life group or to greet people at the door or to work in children's ministry or to pour into high school kids or whatever it is, and Satan says to us, "Oh, that stuff that you did, that Egyptian that you killed,
that's right.
You're not worthy."
Yeah.
And it's so important to recognize that God has each of us in a place to be used by Him, and that place is unique. I can't go where you go. You can't go where I go. The people that I play racquetball with Nobody else has those relationships
That's
except
exactly
me.
right. That's right.
And God has me there for a purpose. So
Well, I just want to add this. I was talking to our youth minister. We both know who was a guy named Greg Stauffer, who
Yeah.
was just like a super youth minister. Did a fantastic job. And I was talking to my son Jason, my oldest boy. I said, "So, man, you were really blessed to have a youth minister like Greg Stauffer and really helped to shape your faith." And he goes, "Yeah, Greg was cool, but it was Todd and Wendy Ackerman who were volunteers
yeah,
that really made the impact in my life."
yeah,
And Todd was in financial planning. Sharp guy, played football in college over at Hope College. But it was, Greg had developed a whole core of volunteers who just helped and exampled and taught. And you never know the impact you have until you get involved
yeah.
and do that. And so it wasn't the paid youth minister who really, this guy is personality plus, and he's like fantastic. But it was, he said, Todd and Wendy Ackerman had more impact on my faith than the youth minister did. And I say, that tells you a lot.
Yeah. It's fun to hear that, because I think back to my decision to do ministry. Ultimately, God called, but my decision to be open to that was largely because of a lady who was in our church. And I grew up in a church that was maybe 100 or 120 people. And she opened her home, and every Wednesday night we went to her house for youth group. And she was single. She had been a missionary in Italy, and had come back. I think kind of just worn out, and was a nurse in the U.S. But she loved the group of 5 or 6 kids that were at the church, and her any influence that I've had is largely because of Bethine Grubauer. So be faithful. Know that where you are is where God has you, and He wants to use you to impact the world, impact your world for eternity.
Amen.
So thanks
Sure
much.
It's
Always
great
good to have you. Always good to have the
I love being
conversation.
here. I love this church. It's a great church.
Don't forget to share, do all that social media stuff that you do. Hope you've been encouraged by today, and we'll see you next week on Northpointe Plus.